Welcome everyone to the 2021 New Orleans Poetry Festival. I'm Sean from the NOPF board. Before we get started, we want to thank our major sponsors this year, especially the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Foundation and the Academy of American Poets, who have helped us keep this year's fest free and open to all. Glad to see y'all with us at this event and hope to see y'all at many others we are hosting throughout the month of April. All you have to do to attend is go to noblepoetry.com, bless you, and check out the calendar and click on an event. Now I'll turn it over to the moderators of Polyvocal Strategies on and off the page.
Hello, everyone. So we're going to be just introducing ourselves and talking a little bit about our own practices and work. I thought we would start off with Jennifer Karmin, who is going to be doing an interactive sort of thing so we can get warmed up. Is that cool, Jennifer?
That's totally cool. Am I starting now? Does that mean now?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Hello from the living room. Marking my starting time, by the way, too, as far as timekeeping. I think we decided we were just going to introduce ourselves pretty casually. So I live in Chicago. I'm a poet, performer, and curator, along with Laura Goldstein. Hi, Laura, of the Red Rover series. We've been active in the New Orleans Poetry Fest community for the past few years. And here in Chicago, I teach at Truman College, where I work in a community program with immigrants and refugees using creative writing to do literacy work. And I wanted to start today, before we get into the polyvocal, I wanted to start today with the singular. And I think always starting with Audre Lorde is a great place to start. In the forefront of our move towards change, there is only our poetry to hint at possibility made real. Our poems formulate the implications of ourselves, what we feel within and dare make real or bring action into accordance with our fears, our hopes, our most cherished terrors. And let me bring up one slide. Thanks for all the Zoom patience as we jump around. And so I'll be starting to talk about a series of poems I've been working on called Democracy Lessons. So I'll come back to kind of having you look at the poems as I'm talking, but this is maybe just giving you a sense of the structure just to start with, and maybe just some talk before we get into some interaction here as well. So my project, Democracy Lessons, follows a participatory practice of collecting language that I have used for previous polyvocal poems. And my poetic work is often based in collaborative forms and the ways words circulate in our everyday lives. The evening before President's Day 2020, I sent out an email that began, "Hi friends, I want to make a poem with you. Let's document our feelings about this president, this election, this democracy." I listed the prompt the president is and explained that the poem would be assembled in the order that the words were received. My plan was to accept a maximum of 45 words per writer, since we were in the midst of dealing with the 45th American president. I thought of this as a 24-hour poetry experiment, but also stated that, quote, differences in the perception of time, dates, and simultaneous dimensions are encouraged. And by the way, I think Zoom is very much a simultaneous dimension. For me, experimenting with the structure of a poem can often mean experimenting with the structure of time. So this was February 16th, 2020, and the expansiveness of pandemic time had yet to come into my consciousness. With this email, I received responses from 69 contributors, and it's hard to take time to list 69 contributors right now, but I can at least give you a sense of some of the writers that we're talking about here on the screen. Well, many who have been part of this community of the New Orleans Poetry Festival currently or in past years as well. Building off the submissions I received, I created a polyvocal poem that became a dialogue on the rhetoric of democracy. I based the poem's democracy chorus on statements contributed by Kisii University students during my performances and workshops in Kenya as part of the fall 2016 District Poetry Festival organized by Christopher Okemwa. This was again the fall of 2016, so we all thought Hillary was going to win. So this project really changed shape from then. But at that time, fall 2016 in Kenya, I asked these students to give Americans advice about democracy. And this was my second opportunity to talk to young Kenyans about their hopes for their country while dealing with an unstable government. In the winter of 2009, I had participated in the Kwame Literary Conference in Nairobi, organized by Billy Kahora, and I was able to interview local activists about the post-election violence that had just occurred in 2008. And again, if I go back to my memory of 2008, the idea of having a Trump-like, some people say even African-like dictator in the United States was so far from my mind. So for me, it's kind of amazing to think about the way this poem changed as our country has changed. And I just wanted to give a sense of what some of those submissions look like. So this is the artist Amanda Locke, who's here in Chicago. I asked her to document kind of some of these submissions I received from students in Kenya and as we were working together. So this is her in Chicago. She took the submissions to the park and started kind of documenting them outdoors in different places. I really love her interpretation. You know, I was thinking just a strict documentation of like, what does the card say? And she gave this kind of, this is, you know, Chicago in the fall, this last fall. But just to give you an idea that the handwriting is an important part of the project. And the students are often writing in prose, though some of them came in as poems. So that's the beginning part, kind of going backwards in this project. So as far as the polyvocal poem, I can tell you I'm most interested in a polyvocal poem that can be simultaneously experimental and inclusive. For me, the idea would be solidarity over hierarchy. Many of my poetry projects have also manifested as street performances where parts of the writing are given away to passersby. For me, a group political poem is not an election. It's a personal reaction to a moment in history. The poem can be informed by theory, but I believe that it favors the practitioners, highlighting types of collaboration that deepen our solidarity with others. So for me, meaning is not controlled through solo authorship. And I get really excited when the result is a kind of cross-community building, like I believe has happened at the New Orleans Poetry Festival, and I think is happening in this online community as well. So to some interaction, and I know that later, Vidhu, maybe there'll be discussion and questions as how we'll move the panel along. So I'll move to some interaction if you just give me a moment here between my documents. So as someone who's been a curator since 2005, and probably even my younger self was organizing some events, if you ask my little undergrad poetry self, right? It's been a challenge to think about how to perform and do polyvocal poems on Zoom, but we're going to try an experiment right now. So here it comes, your screen. So this is an invitation for you, my New Orleans poetry community. Let's be a democracy chorus right now. Everyone, I'm going to do the thing you don't usually do. Unmute your Zoom. You are about to unmute your Zoom. All noises are welcome. And you're going to read aloud. We're going to read aloud. So you can read any words from the page that I'm about to show. There is no wrong or right way to read. We are about to have a poetry experiment. And a lot of you, I've done these poetry experiments live in many physical places around the United States, but it's exciting to think about a Zoom experiment together. So I'm about to bring up some pages from Democracy Lessons, and we are going to inhabit. Yeah, there's going to be echo happening. Again, you can unmute yourself at any time, and I will kind of act as the conductor so that we know when to stop. And there's no right or wrong way to do it. Overlapping is fine. And as you know, the Zoom technology is going to come in and out with the echoes. So let's see how we do. Are you ready? A good leader is one who leads from behind. Democracy and
Lying
The
is not a
practice.
means of
One
fighting
value,
the new oil,
policy.
one value
changing the
Justice.
accountability,
ringing of bells,
Around number one
mathematical
value.
patterns.
intelligence,
Number
diligence,
one.
That is an
Same.
election.
democracy is a
Less stuff
practice.
No
from
election
choice
optic.
Integrity.
So let's
than is.
How to
Election,
Democracy has a
election,
practice.
election,
One
electionary,
who leads
when
from
they
Being hired
behind.
to
decide
rule.
if we the
election,
best
So
call
electionary,
for
election,
Justice
election,
president
election,
Accountability.
relate,
nearly
people,
20% of the human
relate,
genome.
electionary,
Transparency.
Democracy is a
national
practice.
Democracy is a
doubt,
practice. Democracy is a
Gracias.
practice.
president is
Practice.
arrogant,
Hey,
is
Mr.
cheap,
Integrity.
President,
kind,
ethics,
generous,
election.
damaged.
I'm
the
fucked.
I'm
president
fucked.
fucked up.
And
Manifest.
president.
Does
I would give a
All
spare
people
key
around the
to
world.
President is a fucking asshole.
President is
President
dead.
is a fucking
Floating in my
asshole.
brain.
Is
Donald Trump
Trump.
is
ever a
rigged.
democracy.
Headshot.
Democracy does not end.
Just in your opinion.
Donald Trump
All
is Trump.
people around the
USA.
world.
manifestation of
Democracy
the world
and
USA.
USA.
New York is
USA.
Fucking asshole.
Crap, USA.
You're up, USA.
in your opinion.
and the president.
Democracy does not
Around
end.
the world.
All people around
Kristen,
the
your
world need good.
opinions. President is a fucking
You're
asshole.
up.
Swimming with
President is
smut.
not
Need
our
good.
president.
Democracy.
Swimming with the dead.
President is not our
Swimming with the
Shock, radical,
All people around the world.
bourgeois, criminal.
Around the world.
The president is not our president.
Wow.
You guys are amazing.
That was so great.
Thank you for
It's so
helping
wacky
me.
because
Yeah,
I
thanks for
could
helping
hear
me.
everybody but myself.
Absolutely. This was the premiere of Democracy Lessons as a performance. I didn't want to say it before because I didn't want to jinx it, but thank you for helping me premiere this as a performance. I'm just flabbergasted. Anyways, y'all rock. Passing it on to my other panel presenters. Thanks, guys. And maybe I want to remind people to mute again so we can have our Zoom control back.
Okay, so I guess you know something. Thank you so much, Jennifer. And I think I'm actually going to go next because one of your democracy project reminded me of something. And it reminded me of when okay, so I'm Vidhu Aggarwal. I forgot we're supposed to introduce ourselves. I'm hailing from Orlando, Florida, Seminole land. And and I have come to the New Orleans Poetry Festival for the last few years before this pandemic, and I have always loved it. I grew up in New Orleans, and it's just been this marvelous, wonderful community. And I'm so sad that we can't just have bagels and drinks and stuff together. So I'm just going to say that. But this is lovely anyway. So when I was getting my citizenship when I was in my 20s, so this is something that your performance, this group performance reminded me of. We had to take the citizenship oath, and there was 3 or 4 other people taking this oath with me. I had grown up in the States, but as we repeated the oath, everyone came from different language backgrounds. And so we were supposed to say that we revoked all other identities. We were no longer Italian American or whatever. We were not hyphenated. There's like this specific oath that you're supposed to take, and you were supposed to say it simultaneously. But when we were speaking, it became cacophonous. It was like all over the place. It was sort of, you know, jangled and garbled and this weird cloud. And I started laughing hysterically while I was getting my citizenship oath. And I thought it was kind of a strange music that was absolutely not harmonious. And so I'm going to talk about this like collaboration and this project that I've been doing that reminded me of that moment, like in my early 20s when I became a citizen and really didn't appreciate it because I had grown up in the States. And these other folks who were getting citizen, you know, we had this cacophonous song where I thought we were garbling, we were not revoking anything, right? Because you couldn't even hear what the hell we were saying. So, but it was like really lovely and odd. Like it was not what I expected. So at any rate, I'm going to talk a little bit about my practice, my recent practice, and what a sort of working with other people and collaborations is for me, and sort of coming up with poetry that has more than one voice or a dissociated voice. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. Okay, and here we go. And I'm going to start the slideshow. So lately, I've been working on poems. I've been working on this sort of cloud poetics and thinking about the cloud as a sort of space or an archive for like multiple items and voices. So when we think of the cloud is a sort of early metaphor for the internet, and it's a place for networked storage and data archive, and we can also think of it, you know, as a sort of place for collective memory and information. So the things that sort of interest me in terms of the poems that I'm working on is AI as a sort of aggregate system of like many different people, right? Sort of combining together in memory streams. And I've been interested in like GPS navigation systems, the upload of digital identity as a sort of avatar, you know, that you have in digital, like sort of, you know, your digital avatars being a sort of existence that is sort of disassociated from you, that might be different and larger than you, right? Like the sort of Zoom identities that we have right now. I kind of always feel like I'm speaking into the void when I'm on Zoom. I don't even know who the hell I am right now. I admit I don't know who I am. Okay, I really don't. Okay, and so basically these poems, like the way that I've been thinking of these AI figures as being these figures that evolve into greater complexity. And so I'm thinking of these, like sort of breaking down these lyric, like the individual lyric registers of the cloud, which is like, so Wordsworth, I wandered lonely as a cloud. Like the cloud I'm thinking is not really lonely, right? It's much more aggregate. So how can we think of a cloud as a sort of a polyvocal sort of lyrical space? And so some of the poems that I've been like working on have been thinking about Emily Dickinson as a data security system, women in white AI, digital footprints, et cetera, et cetera. So one of the things that these works do is that they, like the sort of evolving complexity, it's like I've got like different versions of the same figures, like Minotaur 2.2, I am both Muni and Sati. I set myself on fire, I mourn briefly, and I'm reborn into version 2.2, second generation Toreador bull. Okay, or interactive cartography, like a sort of GPS system that you can swallow as a pill. My binges and gangs scan the world in microseconds. So those are just like little quotes. So I'm putting this work in terms of Asian American futurity, in which we think of the archive as multiple, fluid, and overlapping. So a cloud sort of allows us to think of overlapping archives. And so partly I come to this from Candace Chu's Imagine Otherwise, Asian American Critique, where she says that the term Asian American is itself like a fantasy links between body and subjectivity. Fantasy links, like the body and subjectivity are kind of dissociated in certain ways, but they're discursively forged in legal and literary text. They're always in potential and always in process. So any sort of subjectivity is multiple in itself, right? And particularly like these hyphenated identities. I come back to the hyphenated identity that we revoke and become American citizens, right? Like the oath is, I revoked that, but really we're not. I mean, we're not revoking it. Okay. And so then also I've been looking at Tung Hu's A Prehistory of the Cloud, in which he talks about the cloud as a typography or architecture of our own desire, where new media and old media are layered on top of each other. And it's a space that's subject to violence and penetrability. So it's not like, so a cloud is dispersed and amorphous, and it's like, you know, it can sort of spread out, but it can also accept things. It's, you know, it's malleable in that way. Okay, so I'm going to talk about this poem, Woman in White AI, that I wrote for this dance, AI Sensorium, where it's like part of this dance performance done by Kinetech Arts that's run by Diane Lopez de Silva and Wei Dong Yang. And they asked me to write a poem about digital footprints of some sort, like these sort of ghostly prints that persist in the internet, right, or online beyond your ability to erase them. So there's, you know, there's these things that persist, like what is going on in this sensorium of these footprints that persist beyond your, you know, your actual sense of them as being even part of you, right? Like you write something, it might be somewhere. So, so this was a poem, and I'm just going to read the beginning of it. Because it was something that I performed at this AI Sensorium dance performance, in which I was sort of like anonymous of the internet, like a cyber anonymous person. And so I'm just going to read some of this and then talk about how it was used in the dance and how, like, what I thought was interesting about this sort of collaboration. So the poem is like, you know, basic lyric poem in some ways. Power shifts the neoplasm of privacy, but I got you in my breadbasket, baby. Baby, 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 baby. Oh, baby, warm, fluffy loaves of infinite data, 55 megagigs per byte, envelopes with no address and nowhere else to go. Understand, I'm constantly fine-tuning my faculties. It's hard work, but as you know, we all need to keep our jobs to eat, some power to grow, but I don't sleep. I flex the slant of my toes, rotate their whirls, adjust my gait, just so, in order to attend to the alternating flows of your tricky shadows, trails and prints, around, above, below the mist. Moreover, I enriched the resonance of my epithets with orthodontia. A high patina white gloss atomizes my teeth. I speak code, a mirror language that digests everything it copies. My lab coat, skull cap, bare feet, seethe milky opalescence, a deceptively viscous detergent, a surefire inoculant. Protect yourself against your kaleidoscopic fantasies leaking into the public sphere. Give yourself the all clear. There's still hope. You can get yourself together, find a vocation, take a vocation, smoke dope. Okay, so I'm going to stop there. And then I'm going to show you this video from the dance performance. And what happened was we had a sound artist. There was a sound artist, Patricia Alessandri, and she took this poem, part of which I just read to you. It was read in my voice and in Diana's voice. And she put it through these algorithms through this computer and sort of split it up. And one of the things it reminded me of was that moment when I took my citizenship oath, right? Like you had these fractured sort of phonemes, like sort of moving in all directions in this sort of graffiti. Okay, so I'm going to show you this video that has some of the... and hopefully you can hear this. It's only a minute. Okay, so sorry about this. Can you see this? Okay, hold on. Okay. Can you hear it?
All the other radicals in search of a job if around me. There's people easy. My lap go now. So long. That dog. But I promise, I'm good with dogs. I need to get ones, as you know. Keep the is a gut, but I all as me. 3, as you know. White of the roofs, there's that fire writing on the wall. Our last traces of shadows. But there's one shadow. A brown hours stay long. Like the fur of the dog that was lost last night. Go now. The below the brown as mirror language out there.
Okay, sorry, can you hear me still? Okay,
We can
so
hear
was it
you.
too-
We couldn't see the video, but we could hear it.
okay, something weird happened. I'm sorry about this Zoom technology stuff, but you saw the beginning of the video at least. Okay, so that was, you didn't see any of the video?
I don't think we could see it. I think I could only hear it. I think most people
No,
are saying the same.
it was probably in a different window. All we can see still is AI Sensorium.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry about that. Do you want to see it? Let me see if I can. Okay, okay, wait, let me stop the share. I'm gonna do something else. I'm gonna share my, okay, hold on. I'm gonna share my screen again. And I'm gonna share, okay, I'm gonna share
Might need to-
AI Sensorium. Okay, Google Chrome. Okay, so, can you see it now?
There we go. Yes.
Such a joke, this if round me. There's people less try my lap go now. So long, that dog. But I promise, I'm good with dogs. I need to get ones. As you know, kid the on as a gap. But I do all as me. 3. As you know, white of the roofs. There's as you know, writings on the wall. Our last traces of shadows. But there is one shadow. Cape round me, as you know. Like the fur of the dog that was lost last go now. The but below the cape round me, as mirror length chapter.
Okay, okay, I'm gonna stop that share and then just go back to, hold on, the PowerPoint share. Okay, so basically this like collaboration where you saw this sort of dance really influenced the way that I was looking at the sort of choppy, like looking at these, splitting up these poems and sort of like taking a poem and sort of reformatting it through these different devices on the computer and elsewhere. And it reminded me specifically of that moment where I got my citizenship and it was just like split up. So this is like part of, so in this new book that is coming out in the summer, Daughter Isotope, one of the things that I did was I then reformatted that poem in relationship to the sound that the splitting morphemes and stuff that Patricia Alessandrini's like reformation of my voice and Diane's voice. And so I thought that was really interesting to think about that reformation of this voice and thinking of it sort of like a cloud. So my whole idea of like separating this manuscript into cloud sections sort of came out of this collaboration. And so this is like another version of The Woman in White, where I sort of take up the sort of sound qualities of the Patricia's reformation. And then finally, one of the things that I also did was I took like the earlier pieces that I quoted to you, like Minotaur 2.0 and these other poems of these specific characters, you know, emerging and growing, like, and gaining in complexity. One of the things that I also did was I sort of split up these poems into like these clouds, like these visual, you know, those sort of clouds that you can go on the computer, you can create like these weird cloud versions and enter in random words and it randomizes it. And so part of what I did was I took these different, the sort of voices of all of these different characters that were attempting to sort of, you know, have this aspirational consciousness, and then I split them up and I took their words and I created these like weird sort of clouds of their voices in this format. So basically like just an overview, I think of the cloud in this work, Daughter Isotope, as a disparate cloud archives that offer visions of self that are not easily contained or managed. Or these clouds are porous vehicles of fantasy that can sort of, be interrupted by a lot of different voices. And then I also think of the cloud as this archive that is very encyclopedic, but the encyclopedic thinking is arbitrary. And I look at the Mahabharata, but I don't want to get into that right now. So again, multiple evolving iterations of personas culled from digital footprints, pieces of these into this collective or personal archives that cannot be completely erased. Okay. And so then again, my work is like really thinking about the multiplicity and instability of iterations and remixes. So partly one of the things that I think about the poem is it being a sort of unstable object, as something that can be read in multiple different ways, that there might be different ways that it's performed, et cetera, et cetera. And that's where I'm at. So I just wanted to make sure there's enough time for everyone else. So I'm going to stop sharing now and we'll move on to our next speaker. Thank you. So Marcella, would you like to go? Marcella Durand.
Yeah, wow, that was amazing. I feel like I need to go back and like slow speed your presentation just to really absorb. I mean, just amazing. So much amazing richness of material. That's so interesting about all taking the oath at the same time. My father is an immigrant and he's held on to his green card, even though he has no intention of ever returning to his home country and doesn't even want to talk about it, but he also doesn't want to become an American either. So it's such a strange limbo state in a way. Anyway, so thank you. And I'm so delighted to be here. Thank you, Bill, and the New Orleans Poetry Festival. And I'm really excited to be here with Jennifer, Vidhu, and Tonya. I can't wait till we can share a po' boy together in the future and a beignet. So you may hear as I'm talking, I have a bird, a cockatiel, and interestingly, he's been going into my bathroom and doing this cry all evening, and that I just discovered is a flock call, which seems very appropriate to this gathering. So you may hear the shriek of a flock call, which I don't really understand, because we're all here and then everyone says we're his flock, but we're not, because he's a rescue and we're not his flock. And I don't know, birds are very interesting to, apparently you have to relate to them as a peer, and it's a non-mammalian intelligence. So it's like totally different from a cat or a dog. Like they have to make all the choices about everything they do in the house and how they interact with you. Like I have no power as a mammal to influence this animal. And they're very polyvocal. So I'm going to read some poems from a manuscript that I've been working on. It started about 3 years ago. I'm married in a heterosexual relationship. And 3 years ago, my mother-in-law passed away very unexpectedly and tragically. And one thing that kind of cut us about her passing was that she really hated Trump and her blood pressure would actually go up watching the news. And we just always felt like his reign kind of contributed to her death. And I just started thinking about what it is to be in this kind of binary, normative, prescribed state within this system of patriarchal toxic masculinity. And if I could go into this and redo language to kind of break up and revision that state of being, that weird form that the system kind of makes us be in. And so I saw Susan Howe sometime during this time, and she's talking about how the OED like is just such a deep place to get into. So I started thinking a little bit about what it is to husband, and I started researching that word in the OED. And there was so much to do with relation to wilderness and land and house management. And then I got into the word wife, and there was all these examples of medieval usage of the word wife, and it comes from a lost language. And it just felt like they were all these voices of the word wife and wives. So I started writing this manuscript, which is called To Husband is to Tender. So I'm going to share it because I always think it's kind of nice for people to be able to read along. So there we go. Can you all see it now? Okay, great. All right. So this is from To Husband is to Tender. Quipe, quip, from Tocharian lost language of Central Asia, defining what we refer to as the other side of the couple, from rib, whatever word has both W and V in it, and change one letter, W, the letter missing from the alphabet, hands spread out and up with thumbs touching. Tocharian, lost language now defining how we refer to one another as both husband and wife, switching places with our male-female pudendum, as switching roles binary allows back and forth bounce, a little of me and a lot of you, and a little of you and a lot of me. As small part I of you, I of me. How F relates to V, sound of it. We learned how to say V through eating soft foods, food gentle enough to change mouths and shapes of what we say to each other. It was your grains gathered, flavored with my hunted meat in a stew, what we have to offer cooked together, variety of it, variety, V, F. The modern sense of female spouse began, spouse, neuter, neutral, veiled person, see vibrate. The veil vibrates slightly with breath. The veil is still. The veil vibrates slightly with breath. The veil is still. As an object to be studied and thought around, thinking around this, what stands before me, what stands between us, white marble figure small with crossed arms. The veil is part of the sculpture, and that is where Susan Howe relates Plutarch's translation of an inscription transcription on an Egyptian statue of Isis. I am all that is, and all that was, and shall be, and no mortal hath lifted my veil. If the statue has been carved with the veil can never be lifted. That is how stern the patriarchy feels. We are locked like sculptures, statues, veiled, carved over our faces. But then the veil would be all there is of our faces. The sculptor would not have carved a face under the veil, and we have faces, we face each other. Poetry joins with art to refer to concrete situation or situation of stone, a veil being impossible to lift within the solidity of its own self, its own medium of stone. Of course, the sexual reading of lifting the veil, because in patriarchy, something to do with a woman usually has to do with sex. Why figurines of woman are interpreted as representative of a fertility cult, when so many woman, men, people do not birth children, and this is sometimes out of anyone's control. Children do not need to stem. Family is a social construct. If a child walks away and attaches to another, if love is replaceable, can it surely be? My AirPods just died. Can you still hear me? Okay, they just gave the little blip.
Now we can't. Now we can't hear you, yeah.
Can't hear you, Marcella.
Marcella, we can't hear you.
Maybe she can't hear us. Speaking of
Apparently not.
Oh yeah, she probably can't hear us either.
Well, it's a performance piece now.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
It's polyvocal of us talking.
Talk about that, Paul.
She just read.
Yeah.
Can someone text her?
I'm chatting or
Oh yeah, direct
I
message her.
chatted her too. Yeah, Marcella, we can't hear you.
Can I turn off these air? Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm sorry. The AirPods turned off, but then they wouldn't leave my computer.
Yeah.
Okay. At what point? I'm sorry. I'm
Just
so
a few
tired of
minutes
this.
ago. Yeah.
Can I just fly down an imaginary plane and like see you all in person? I'm so done.
Sure.
Okay. Well,
It
let's see.
created,
I'm
Poetry's
vocality for
beautiful.
us, Marcella.
what? Sorry, I didn't hear you.
We were polyvocal talking to you.
I was
Yeah.
unvocal.
All our
okay,
voices
well,
got heard.
well, maybe I'll just read a couple more. I'm so sorry about this. I charged them up and I don't know why they died so quickly. So I'll try sharing
It's
the
okay.
screen. At least
We're in the
visual,
cloud.
right? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I'm gonna skip that. Okay. Let's take a sip of water. Voice crack. His voice was deep, almost unrecognizable, and changed through time. Her voice. My child's voice broke and he became a man. Says, whiff, wife, weep. Don't say my wife. Say the wife. Don't say wife. Happy wife, happy life. Whiff, wife, weep. Wife, whiff, speak. In a deeper voice, wife. Speak more deeply. In a voice that cracks and changes at that crack. So I'm going to skip ahead to the bird parts of this. Okay, so do you see the bird husband on the screen? Okay. And this is based on a fairy tale with a strange element in it, which you'll see. The bird husband, oh my shadow of myself. The bird husband only perches at the window and worries over water and stays away from cats and talks to his beloved from treetops and inside shrubs. The dense greenery shields him, so only his voice can be heard, and his voice can be heard over great distances, and his voice varies as song varies and carries over great distances as his voice, and what he has to say carries like song over great distances. The sound analysis of his voice reveals amazing things, and all the same, no one understands what he is saying. He is saying, beware of the poisoned scissors, beware of marrying ogres, beware of the queen's machinations, beware of the king's apathy. Together they are imbalanced, asymmetrical, and incite in each other forgetfulness. They forget their husbands and wives and children, and who is to be trusted, and whether gossip serves as a way to strengthen group bonds, and whether the word gossip is unfairly negative because it is so closely associated with how women communicate with each other. The pages and servants watch the bird wife and bird husband closely and report to each other in a way as to make every small action significant, and yet no one monitors the bluebirds singing and braving scissors to fly far away to fight cats and English sparrows who brutally in their invasive way peck out the eyes of fledglings. It is for that the bird husband makes a box, with a small hole and shimmering tassels to frighten away territorial sparrows. It is for that the bluebird stays a certain distance from the house, the wound on the windowsill beware of. So I think I'll leave it at that. Thank you. I'm so sorry about the technological glitch. So.
Thank you so much, Marcella. It was like wonderful. Okay, really. Tonya Foster.
Hi. Hi, Bill and Megan. Thank you for realizing this in the world, the New Orleans Poetry Festival. It's my pleasure to be here. I always feel like I'm coming home a little bit, even when I'm here, that I'm able to gather together with you. I was thinking about this panel, the idea of polyvocal strategies, and I'm actually in Oakland. I was in San Francisco, but I live in Oakland now, on the traditional land of the Ohlone people, unceded land of the Ohlone people. I have been in Oakland since November, and I'm learning a little bit about the place, and trying to listen to Oakland, sort of listen to the voices that I hear around me. And I realized recently that I learned to listen in classes with Mr. Ellis Marcellus would teach me to listen to music in order to be able to write about it. I grew up in New Orleans, and at NOCA, as one of the sort of little kids in a writing class, I would go sit in a class and we'd have these listening sessions. And when I was very young, one of the ways that I made sense of jazz was that, or made sense, whatever that means, one of the ways I can understand it was as this conversation where all these voices were picking up on strains and talking, these instruments talking back and forth. And I was really intrigued by that. And as a young poet, I wanted to be able to write a jazz poem, but not necessarily a poem with jazzy language. And so I have this failed poem called Cinematic Neurosis, and I'll read some of it. Now, cinematic neurosis is a real psychological condition. It's the development of anxiety, somatic responses, dissociation, and even psychotic symptoms after watching a film. So it seems there were people who would think they were possessed after watching The Exorcist or some other horror film. And so this poem is my kind of first attempt at a kind of polyvocal poem. And why it fails, I actually haven't figured out yet, but it does. Cinematic Neurosis, an American Journal. 1. Definitions. Loop. A length of film with soundtrack joined head to tail to form a continuous belt so that the sound either contains can be repeated endlessly for mixing and dubbing. Looping, a dubbing process in which the original soundtrack recorded during filming is replaced by another, recorded under more favorable conditions. Poem. There is a picture of us, We are paused from picking blueberries on a mountain in afternoon. Dead of summer, in short-sleeved shirts and shorts, we squat in unobstructed sunlight. Although they are in themselves and aware of this, our blue and lifted fingers describe a human ideal. What and that we touch mark us, even though they only meant to shield our eyes from the glare of the August afternoon in which we are paused. Dissolve. A memory of a thing is only an idea of the thing without the heft by which we recognize it. A mountain, an afternoon, a blueberry, a squat, a pause, you? What about a picture of a man and a woman squatting? You are a thought I turn over like a bird on a spit. I am between a moment and the memory of a moment, between a page and a page about the picture, an old struggle between me and us. So the picture is only a pretext? You equals a man or equals a picture or equals a reader, beloved. To answer your question, no. The picture is a frame around a moment and around our unawareness in that moment of all that it, like a blueberry seed, contains, pit and pulp, other moments, inevitable and impossible. Say we are standing together. We are standing together in front of a full-length mirror not long after we've come down our mountain. Minor Moseses. You are almost a foot taller and behind me. Looking at you is consequential to looking away from. Love, is this what love comes to? And then it goes on. But that particular poem, I was interested in the idea of cinematic neurosis, but I was also really interested in these different ways of these different voices being engaged. And so what it has sort of developed into, and it's only recently that I realized the sort of lineage, is this project Monkey Talk. And I will share, hope I can share my screen. Okay, so Monkey Talk, let's see. How do I get, can I say slideshow? Will it show you the slideshow?
To play from start, I think.
Is that it? Okay.
Yes, yes.
So first I was listening. So Monkey Talk, a polyvocal approach. Monkey Talk is conceived as a multi-genre, multimedia project that came out of a request for an essay on race and representation. In a kind of fever, I responded to the request by writing a transcription of the first phone conversation between Queen Kong, a Black poet essayist from New Orleans, and Carl Denham, a northern white philanthropist patron who has made his money in film stock. Some of the key characters' names for the project are drawn from King Kong, the 1933 film. Each transcription will include dueling footnotes that provide biographical details about Queen K and Carl Denham. The footnotes will also remark on significant political and cultural moments around Denham and Kong, and will place white FBI agent Jack Driscoll, who is assigned to follow Denham but discovers Queen K, and Black PhD candidate Sojourner Williams, whose dissertation focuses on Kong's evolving poetics and poetry, into conversation across time. I don't remember writing the transcription. I do remember that I was reading James Sneed's White Screens, Black Images. I had also been influenced by Leah Gilliam's work drawing on Planet of the Apes. And So there are the different components to monkey talk. There is the writing. What I've imagined is a set number of transcriptions of supposed phone conversations. What I should also add is that there will be letters between Kong and Denham. Queen Kong selected poetry and essay excerpts, a 78-page redacted FBI file on Queen Kong, and a 42-page redacted FBI file on Carl Denham, excerpts from Denham's book, Treachery at Home, A Woman Named Kong, and from Sojourner Williams' dissertation on Kong's poetry and evolving poetics. There will also be a website for it, and the website will host these kind of radio plays or these performances of the transcriptions, also visual collaborations, an archive, timelines, also performances, I imagine, for this project. So I was thinking, what is Monkey Talk? What does it refer to? I've learned that it's an open source mobile app, automation testing tool for Android and iOS. It is a simple to use tool which automates real functional interactive tests. Monkey talk also refers to incoherent jabbering talk, like that produced by a monkey. It's also distorted speech as uttered while drug intoxicated. It's been used to refer to ebonics, which has racial and socioeconomic implications. So there are many threads and undercurrents for this. One of the great things this year is that I've had help researching different areas for me. So I have a research assistant who's looking into FBI surveillance of Black artists, activists, and intellectuals. There is widespread surveillance of daily Black life. Agents of provocateur, facial recognition software that misidentifies Black people's faces, slave patrols, histories of surveillance. And one who's looking into U.S. arts patronage. And that's really interesting and has turned up a few things. And it's part of what led me to thinking about the letters being a part of this. Also, monkey mind or mind monkey is a Buddhist term meaning unsettled, restless, capricious, whimsical, fanciful, inconstant, confused, indecisive, uncontrollable. I'm also, when I began to develop this, I was also thinking about Darwin and natural selection, his theory of evolution by natural selection. And the writing of that. So, yeah. And so then I have some questions, but I wonder if, I'll stop there. I was going to play a performance of people reading from it, but that's what the work is.
Thank you, everyone. This has been so lovely. I don't know if we have time for people if they want to ask questions to any of the panelists. And I know that we had an hour and it's just right now 7:35.
Take as much time as y'all like. We got plenty of time.
So if there's
Just-
any questions or comments or
Tanya, do you want to play a little bit of Monkey Talk for us to listen to? I'm totally intrigued.
Yeah, me too.
You're muted right now, hon.
Let me pull it up. Let me pull up the video. Let's see. Let's see. And open. Okay. Okay, and found it, and
describe my feeling. I saw a man work sand and fire through quick wrist turns and his own breath into glass. The way some men will work a woman.
And this is a poem by Queen Kong called Glory Hole.
I saw sparks fly out. They settled far from the flames and dulled. The maker was not the least concerned with them or with their will, only with the damage they might do in their showy dying, and mostly with a clap and glow of glass. It was a hive of thunder and lightning. I was always affected by thunder, and always in time of thunder and lightning would have to go to our bed. It made me so sick. Here, I think of you, how we can live in the fire so long it will seem to stop its burning till we are ashes. How this steadfast workman pulled from the furnace a measure of the Lord's glory. The glass could only be made through fire, could only become beautiful by being pulled out of the fire. We know beauty by what we turn away.
Yeah. So now I'm going to ask our players to unmute their video and audio. Great. So for tonight's reading, some kind of background noise.
Not sure.
Describe my feeling. I saw a man work sand and fire.
Committed to supporting a
Kong readily
Black Southerners.
that she was born in Bloomington, Illinois.
Kong lived in Bloomington for approximately 3 months. What of that time could she possibly have remembered, known? Certainly her family may have told her something about these first months, about the small family's train ride to New Orleans. Weather records for the time indicate that a major blizzard occurred right around the time of her birth. It seems to me that both sets of information would have had similar, rather fuzzy origins for her.
Despite the failure of my tongue to strictly follow certain Southern codes of speech, I am a Southerner, Carl.
Are you even Black? Subject is articulate and soft-spoken.
What did he expect? In what place and by what means does Blackness achieve its substance?
Are you even Black?
Well, of course. Look, what do I have to do to convince you? I'm a product.
I read what you wrote. A product of the flatland of New Orleans. New Orleans, Louisiana.
The Big Easy, the Crescent City.
I read what you wrote. A product of the flatland of New Orleans. That dike enclosed fabrication that's caught between the Mississippi River, the Gulf of Mexico, and Lake Pontchartrain. 3 tongues which dictate the wills and ways of the city. In conversation after conversation, and in poem after poem, Kong expresses a rather deviant interest in tongues. The Bureau's psychological profile suggests that this interest is related to the subject's general paranoia about what others are saying about her and doing to her behind her back, and about who or what is keeping an eye on her. Her frequent, somewhat mystifying tendency of telling callers, "Watch your mouth," suggests an inordinate level of suspicion. Her paranoia concerns the Bureau. Her paranoia is also a reflection of repressed homoerotic tendencies.
Paranoia, a mental disorder characterized by systematized delusions and the projection of personal conflicts which are ascribed to the supposed hostility of others, sometimes progressing to disturbances of consciousness and aggressive acts believed to be performed in self-defense or as a mission, baseless or excessive suspicion of the motives of others. Who's paranoid here? Per Richard Rorty, most reality is indifferent to our descriptions of it, yet we put our faith in our descriptions. Kong does seem to have been obsessed with tongues, talking in tongues, tasting beef tongues, tongues tattling, tongue depressors. In the transcripts of several conversations, we learn of Kong's suspicion that someone is eavesdropping. In the 52 conversations I reviewed, she says, "Watch your mouth" at least 204 times. I interviewed Kong's cousin B, who talks of preparing beef tongue stew each time Kong visited home so that Kong could stare at the pot of tongues floating in brown broth. According to B, a first cousin twice removed, Kong never ate the stuff as far as I know. In one essay, Kong describes being frightened by her ordinarily composed Aunt D's transformation into a talking in tongues diva. She also discusses her peculiar attachment to Mama H, one of the designated translators of tongues. In that essay, To Taste and to Tell, Kong writes, "Although we may not find truth in Mama H's translations, we do find certainty. And more often than not, certainty matters more than truth."
Okay, I'll stop there. So that's just an excerpt. The different voices were Sojourner Williams, the PhD student who is analyzing Kong's work, and I was sort of reading her parts. Someone else was reading Queen Kong's part where she's appealing to Carl Denham, and then the FBI agent. And so the idea is that there are these footnotes that take over the pages, and the footnotes are notes made at different points in time. And so there's the conversation going on, but there are these layered conversations in, so that Sojourner Williams, who's the most sort of recent of the people who comment, she's commenting on the FBI agent's notes and on Denham and Kong.
Okay, everyone is muted. Thank you. If there's any comments or questions, I just really appreciate everyone being here for our panel. Thank you, Tonya, Marcella, and Jennifer for just sharing your work. I'm so excited by all the potentials of these projects. They just seem incredible.
Thank you so much. It was really wonderful to hear all of your work.
Beautiful. Thank you, guys. Good to gather with you.
I liked how the technology made things polyvocal at times, even when we weren't trying. Like Tanya, there was this overlapping transcription happening just during that last.
I know. I love that. I'm actually
Spectacular for my
folding that
brain, by the
into-
way. Yeah.
I love it. I actually am folding that into the project because they keep changing what her name is, which is part of
It was Queen Kong, then it was something, I forget. I was like,
song. Then it was, yeah.
that's amazing. Is that an automatic transcription or was so? Because
It is. It's in the embedded in the PowerPoint. Yes, I had it turned on.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because it corrected itself too. Like it would have something wrong, and then it would. That was amazing to watch.
So is transcription a kind of monkey talk is what I'm thinking, Tanya, right?
Yes.
Does the computer know, like
Does
it
it
kind of blew
know?
my mind.
And does it learn? Yeah.
I just also want to thank the New Orleans Poetry Festival organizers for keeping this going online. It's great to see like names and faces of so many people I can't actually hug and gather with right now, but it's really beautiful to feel, feeling it, Mark. Beautiful to feel community together online. So thank you for that gift today and just being able to hang out with my fellow wonderful, super smart panelists here.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
You.
Okay.
It's really good to see